Hello there folks, my name is Spoonks and welcome back to another episode of Box Office Chat. This is the show where I break down the top 5 domestic box office results, see where each movie landed, and see how well each movie did. So let's get started. Number 5 was Oppenheimer, making $5.6 million this weekend, adding to a domestic total of $310 million and a worldwide total of $853 million. Yet another fantastic weekend for Oppenheimer. It has officially surpassed the $300 million milestone domestically, which is great, but it is also now the second highest grossing R-rated film of all time worldwide behind Joker, as it managed to surpass both Deadpool movies worldwide. I've said this a billion times before, and I'll say it a billion times again. Imagine telling yourself that Oppenheimer would surpass these movies like 5 months ago. I think you would find it very, very hard to believe. Yet here we are. It just goes to show you once again the momentum, the power, and the hype this movie had. It had a great opening in China. Everyone is just rushing out to go and see what the hype and buzz is about. And while I think it's safe to say that this is one of, if not the last time we will see this movie in the top 5, man, what a run it has had. Just against all odds, how different and how completely not it was the type of summer movie you would expect to come out, and yet it made blockbuster money, surpassing the likes of movies that many people thought would make this type of money. You know, The Flash, Indiana Jones, Mission Impossible, and so on and so forth. This was the movie to dethrone all of those and make a name for itself. And it goes to show you the power of Christopher Nolan and the power of a great movie overall. A huge win for Christopher Nolan, a huge win for like these types of movies, these talkative, really long drama type films. It goes to show that there is still an audience that will go out and see these movies, and it shows that it can still be very successful. Just a phenomenal run at the box office. Number 4 was Gran Turismo, making $6.5 million this weekend, adding to a domestic total of $30 million and a worldwide total of $80 million. So it seems that Sony's reliance on audience word of mouth did not win in their favors, as this film took a big hit this weekend, falling 62% from last weekend. That is just not what you want to see, especially with all the praise it got from audiences. It did get an A on CinemaScore, which is definitely comforting. It's definitely a positive sign, but unfortunately it just doesn't seem like that many people wanted to go check this out, as like evident with the second weekend drop off. And I'm not sure if this movie is going to be able to get to that initial production budget if it keeps going where it goes. On a positive side though, it does seem like this movie may get to the doubling point of its initial $60 million budget worldwide, as right now it's at $80 million worldwide. It's sure to surpass $100 million very soon, and maybe, just maybe, get to that doubling point. I think it's going to be a while before we see that happen, but still though, it definitely seems like at the very least it's sure to get to that point at some point. But still, given all the marketing they put into this and like how they really relied on the audience word of mouth by doing this special formatted release, because of that they thought this would be a much better idea than paying their writers and actors fairly, it does put into perspective how this is pretty disappointing for them. And I am definitely curious to see how this affects Dumb Money, their next film that they're doing this sort of limited release, expand into wide later on. Definitely gonna be interesting to see how that does in regards to the same release window type thing. But yeah, as far as this movie, it's looking pretty disappointing. Number 3 was Blue Beetle, making $7.1 million this weekend, adding to a domestic total of $58 million and a worldwide total of $104 million. So looking at the positives, it has surpassed the entire domestic gross of Shazam! Fury of the Gods, which is, you know, great. That's definitely best case scenario right there. And it has surpassed its initial $104 million budget worldwide, which is probably the best thing they could have hoped for, as despite it holding better than the aforementioned Shazam, it's still not catching on. There's just, like with Gran Turismo, there's just not a lot of interest for this movie, unfortunately. I thought, with especially this would have caught on, given that it's like the new superhero movie, but no, just the lukewarm responses has really just kind of hurt this movie. This wasn't as big of a word of mouth hit as they were hoping it would be, and it's really causing the movie to fall short of those expectations, sadly. And despite surpassing its initial budget, it is still a long way to go of doubling it, as internationally it doesn't seem to be catching on either. So yeah, unfortunately this looks like another lackluster return for DC. Again, not as big of a disaster as like Shazam or The Flash, as at least this movie is holding well and much better than those movies, but still, it's not really performing all that great, unfortunately. Number 2 was Barbie, making $10 million this weekend, adding to a domestic total of $612 million and a worldwide total of $1.3 billion. So not only has the film surpassed the $600 million milestone domestically, making it the first film of the year to do so, and probably the only film of the year to do so. I don't see any other movie really clamoring to this throne, really, but it has also finally done it, as it is now officially the highest grossing film of the year, both domestically and worldwide. Yes, folks, it has surpassed the Super Mario Brothers movie worldwide. Just an absolutely phenomenal run it has had, and keep in mind, folks, it still looks like there's no signs of stopping this thing. Sure, we are in the point where it's slowing down, but it's not even slowing down by that much. It's still holding very well. There is still a lot of interest and audiences going to check this movie out, despite other movies hitting theaters right now. This movie is still capturing people's attention, which is crazy to see, and shows, once again, like I said with Oppenheimer, the power of a great movie, and you can still make a very solid, successful one at that if your movie's great enough and the audiences loves it as much. The only downside here for me, though, is that I'm starting to run out of things to say about this movie, honestly. So yeah, overall still an absolutely great achievement. So happy to see this movie surpassing these milestones, and happy to see where it can go from here. And finally, let's end the video off with the number 1 movie of the weekend, which was The Equalizer 3, opening with $34 million this weekend, and including the Labor Day numbers, that adds to a domestic total of $42 million and a worldwide total of $68 million. This is the second biggest opening weekend in the Equalizer franchise, barely getting over the first film's $34.1 million opening weekend back in 2014, but $2 million under the $36 million opening of Equalizer 2 in 2018. It is also the second biggest opening weekend on a Labor Day, topping Transporter 2, The Possession, and the 2007 Halloween film, but it sits behind Shang-Chi and The Legend of the Ten Rings. So as expected, this movie had a pretty solid opening given the $70 million budget. $34 million domestically ain't that bad, but $68 million is even better. It's pretty much locked to surpass that and double that worldwide. I think we will see it do that very soon. The word of mouth on this thing is also pretty positive. It got an A on CinemaScore, and I have a feeling that this will not turn out like Gran Turismo, as I did feel that the buzz on this was much bigger than that film, and given that this is the only action film in theaters right now, and given how we're kind of in a slower period with a lot more smaller movies hitting theaters, I think this film will be able to hold well given that. And once again, audiences just seem to really like this franchise, and the fact that they've been so consistent, being in this $36-34 million range in terms of openings, is quite impressive, honestly. The fact that they've been pretty much able to keep the same core audience throughout these years is pretty solid. So yeah, very solid opening for Equalizer 3. It shows that this franchise still can keep people interested And given that this is the last one, I'm sure this will end things off with a bang, as I'm sure everyone is happy to see the film have a successful opening weekend. And I think its legs are going to be very solid. And yeah, overall, pretty good start for this movie. Not much more else to add, but yeah, let's see where it goes from here. And those were your top 5 domestic box office results for this weekend, but we're not quite done yet, as we've got another week ahead of us and new movies hitting theaters. And this weekend we have one new major wide release. I do know that My Big Fat Greek Wedding 3, for some reason, is coming out this weekend, and I'm sure, given how low the numbers were this weekend, it will crack in the top 5, but I'm just not sure if its numbers are going to be really that big or that make that much of an impact. I just don't see the buzz or the interest for this movie here. I just have so little expectations. It's been so long since the second film, and even longer since the last one. So that could pretty much tell you how well I think this is gonna do. So let's move on to the other major wide release, which is The Nun 2. This is, of course, the sequel to the spin-off of the Conjuring franchise. Yep, the last one made a lot of money, and they're gonna do another one. And I think it's an understatement to say how successful of a year it was for the horror genre. I mean, for crying out loud, look at Talk to Me. It didn't even crack the top 5, and yet that movie is hugely successful. And I see this being no exception. The marketing for this movie has been very solid. The buzz is strong, and the attachment to the Conjuring franchise will definitely help it out. It's such a big, pivotal horror franchise in this modern age, and I think once again that'll definitely help it out. And also, given that we are slowly approaching spooky season, Halloween Horror Nights is already up and running at Universal. I'm even seeing people getting excited for Halloween and saying how they're already decorating. I think, given that this is the first horror movie of the month, I think that will also help this movie out. And yeah, overall, I expect very positive things for this movie. I think we're going to see a really solid number here. But we'll see how well this movie truly does, as well as the rest of the movies that land in the top 5 on the next Box Office Chat. And that's going to do it for this week's episode of Box Office Chat. What did you all think of the results? Were you satisfied? Unsatisfied? Comment down below and let me know. If you like this video, hit the like button. If you like this channel, hit the subscribe button. Follow me on all the social media links right there. And until next time, everyone, stay sharp.